Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me here on Wave Now. I'm Myra Ansari. Hope you're doing well. For our latest episode of We Should Talk About It, we are joining an organization here in Louisville. It's called DBSA, Depression Bipolar Support Alliance. And they reached out to me, actually, wanting to be on our podcast today to talk about what they offer here in our community, the support services that they have for folks who are struggling with bipolar disorder. Today, joining us is Travis McLean. Travis, thank you so much for joining us here today. Tell us about DBSA and what you all do.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Myra. So DBSA stands for the Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance. We are a peer-led organization, which means that nobody participates in our groups as a credentialed professional. One of our programs that I'm particularly keen on is we have an inpatient outreach program where we do a group for inpatients at a local mental health facility. And the way that I explain it to them is that my only qualification for being there is that I've been there. I mean that metaphorically, and I mean that physically. I've been inpatient myself 3 times. I have dealt with suicidal ideation since I was 9. And so not everybody in our group has that exact experience, but everybody has their version of it. So one of the problems with depression, bipolar disorder, is the stigma, the isolation. What we provide is an opportunity to be in the company of other people who have been there. I mean, our motto is, we've been there, we can help. And we do that by providing that space to open up in the company of people who understand from their own firsthand experiences. It's a very simple format, but quite effective.
I like the slogan that you have, we've been there, because that makes it so relatable for a lot of folks. Travis, for those that don't know or understand fully bipolar disorder, what is it? And it does impact a lot of people.
It does, and I'm afraid I don't know the statistics offhand, but the hallmarks are severe depressive episodes and manic episodes. And I don't remember the exact criteria. I think it's 1 episode every so often qualifies for a diagnosis. I don't know. As I said, we're peers, not professionals. But yeah, it's a period mania that is where a person is not necessarily in control of their thoughts. Their rapid cycling is the phrase that they use, where they're going a mile a minute, and the ability to focus, participate in daily life can be impaired. Judgment can be impaired. People in a manic episode can engage in some destructive behavior at times for themselves, sometimes for other people. Not really violent destructive, but in terms of financial irresponsibility, these kinds of things come up a lot, conversations that we have. Depression can lead all the way down to being suicidal. Usually, in our experiences, based on what's shared, it doesn't become that severe often enough, but I shouldn't say often enough that that's a go-to. But it is on the table. And there are stages of being depressed where, again, the ability to just participate in daily life is severely impaired.
Travis, can you share a little bit about your personal journey and when you realized that you were struggling?
Sure. So I realized sometime around age 9 that it was probably abnormal to have suicidal thoughts on a regular basis. But I did. And I went undiagnosed and untreated until my early 20s because I'm old enough that I was at that age. I was just moody. It was a phase I'd grow out of, that kind of thing. It turns out it wasn't There was something wrong. And I'm grateful that today's parents are more cognizant of the reality that young people do experiencing these things on concerning levels, and they are getting more acknowledgement and more support and more treatment. And I'm grateful to see that. My experience was not quite that. It wasn't, like I said, until my early 20s that I finally reached a point where I thought, okay, this is not a phase that I'm outgrowing. This is not getting any better. And I finally went to my then general practitioner and explained the situation and got on my first antidepressant. And that's an almost universally shared frustrating part of living with a mood disorder is finding the right treatment. Our official position as an organization is we don't endorse any specific treatment. We have plenty of people who aren't comfortable taking psych meds for various reasons. Side effects can be awful.
Sure.
The interactions and finding the right dosages and everything, it's an exhausting trial and error process. I personally reached a point, this was 2011, where at one point my provider straight up told me there weren't that many things left to try. And that's not something you want to hear from any healthcare provider.
No.
So what came to a head was a 12-month-long depressive episode from October 2010 to October 2011. It was isolating. It was severely damaging to all of my relationships. I have Crohn's disease. And so when I told people I wasn't feeling well enough to go out, they assumed that's what I meant was the problem, and I didn't bother to correct them. But the truth is that I was so consumed by depression that I didn't deserve to be around them. They were better off without me ruining their night, or, they were including me out of politeness. And, these were my thoughts. This wasn't how they actually saw things, but I was convinced of it. And these are people I know love me.
Yeah.
They've been with me for decades. But that depressive episode just, one of the things that I like to clarify for people about depression, and this is not just my own personal experience, this is something that pretty much everybody I've ever spoken with about it has agreed. A lot of people have the idea that depression is fixating on the negative, and it's not. The depressed mind doesn't have to remind me what's negative in my life. I'm very well aware of those things. What depression does is it takes the good in my life and turns it to ash. I'm incapable of enjoying anything during a depressive episode. Everything is hollow. Nothing I could accomplish or succeed at doing has any merit. It's a very hollow way to go through a day. And that has been shared by a lot of people with me in conversations that's exactly how they've experienced it too.
I'm sure you get this, Travis, a lot, but you are very brave to kind of put yourself out there and share your story because it does impact a lot of people. I'm just looking at the comments on our feed right now. I'm going to give a shout out to Chad Knopf. He said, a very important topic that should have more honest discussion like this instead of reactionary neglect. Couldn't agree more, Chad, for that positive comment that we do have to have open, honest conversations. And sometimes that requires putting your story out there and letting people know, Travis, that they're not alone, because there are people watching right now that probably hear what you just said and said, my goodness, that's how I feel. Maybe they're not being seen or heard with their feelings. When you, Travis, finally got that figured out what was going on, how did that help you, or how did that make you feel?
Well, the first thing that I'd like to say is that I respond strongly with the word honest that was in that comment. I was facilitating a virtual support group on Thursday evening with somebody who was participating in their very first DBSA group. And he shared at the end of it that it was the most honest conversation he'd been part of in a very long time. And that was gratifying, I think, for me to hear, because that is an important part of what our format does, is it creates that space where people can open up. I have no idea how many times I've heard the phrase, "This is the first time I've ever talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time I've ever opened up about that." And these are traumatic experiences a lot of times, where I don't respond particularly strongly to compliments like being called brave for sharing this. But then, as my therapist will tell you, I don't do well with compliments in general. We're working on it. But as far as putting it out there, that's one of the things that depressive episode from 2010 to 11 taught me, was that keeping it to myself did not work for me. It made it worse. It compounded it. Because every time I withdrew, it fed into the rationalization the depression had that I was right to do that. And so the phrase I think I used at the time was, it felt like the depression was taking me hostage. And the only way I knew to deal with it was to proverbially shoot the hostage and take my ego out of it, take my vanity out of it, and just own up to, this is what I'm dealing with. And when I was discharged from being inpatient the first time, one of the hardest things I had to do was call that core group of friends that I had withdrawn from for those 12 months and tell them where I had been. And I mean that in the physical sense of having been in the hospital for that weekend, but also having been in that depressed state, and explaining to them that no, it wasn't always my physical health that kept me from participating. It was a problem periodically enough that it wasn't a straight out lie. Mm-hmm. But the mental health was more of a factor than I acknowledged or admitted. And to their credit, to a person, every one of them said, I wish we had known. We would have been understanding. We'd have been supportive. We would have still given you the space to just stay home and cope if that's what you needed. Mm-hmm. We'd have come hung out with you. They would have included me. But all those things that depression told me wouldn't have been the case, turns out they were. Mm. There's more understanding and support from people in our own lives than I think depression lets us give them credit for. Mm.
Tell me more, Travis. We've got some folks joining us right now, listening in, and they want to know more about DBSA, Depression Bipolar Support Alliance. This is a local group that you all are here in the Louisville area. Tell us what you all do.
Well, so first of all, we're the local chapter, but it's a nationwide organization, mm-hmm. Celebrating its 40th anniversary this year. Our chapter is celebrating our 25th. And I personally am celebrating my 10th anniversary with the chapter. Lots of milestones there. And it was founded for the whole purpose that I've described, of creating that space where people who have lived with these things have a chance to hash them out and share them in a place where other people get it from their own personal experiences too. The name DBSA Louisville is almost a misnomer at this point. We have expanded. We have a group in Jeffersonville, Indiana. We have a group in Lexington. We offer 3 Zooms a week, and we have participants from Pennsylvania to Oregon. People who lived in this area and have moved but wanted to remain active with us. We have folks in Litchfield. They also join by Zoom. And sometimes when they're able to make it in town, they drop in person. And on that note, our thoughts are certainly with everybody who's affected by these horrible floods. And that's included some of our folks and a lot of people that our group love.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking to see those things.
Yeah. Travis, I think the fact that you all make yourself so accessible to folks is really helpful. I've already got people saying, I want to know more about it. Folks, if you're joining us, I have put a link to DBSA's website here. So just click on it. You're going to get more information about the meetings that Travis just mentioned. So if this is something that you want to learn more about, please click on their link. You can figure out more information, how you can join those meetings in person via Zoom. It can be very helpful. Travis, when you're in a group with folks and they open up about sharing their stories, how does that help?
Well, first of all, it takes away that sense of being alone. One of the conversations came up recently in a meeting was how outside that meeting, in a social group, I might be the one with the mood disorder. In that setting, though, I get to be the Reds fan. I get to be the Star Trek fan. I get to be, just a person. And I'm not the person with the long-time issues with depression. One of the things that we do when we open a meeting is we have an intro around how would you like to get dressed for the night? How are you feeling? And we throw in an icebreaker. And I always explain the point of the icebreaker is to remind us that there's more to us as human beings than diagnoses and treatment plans and appointments and therapists and medications and blah, blah, blah. Because it gets forgotten. That gets overlooked. Even when you're in treatment, it can take over. You can get tunnel vision that's your life is dealing with this. And it doesn't have to be. Mm-hmm. You can still participate in the rest of life. You can still be, a Reds fan and a Star Trek fan and whatever else, you are.
Travis, for folks that are joining us today or listening to this podcast and they think, wow, I have felt like Travis before. I have felt very hopeless. I have thought about suicide. I have thought about all the negative thoughts. I've thought that I'm not important. What would you say to them, Travis?
Well, one of the things that I always make a point of saying when suicide comes up, I have had a great many conversations with a great many people over the years about it. And there is one universally agreed thing that has been shared. None of us wanted to be dead. What we wanted was the pain to stop. And we didn't know how else to make that happen. So what I would say to someone who is struggling with that right now, there is another way to make the pain stop and become manageable. I don't know what it is. I wish I did. I don't. A lot of times people find enough help with one of our group meetings that it becomes more manageable. But we're not the only game in town. There are plenty of other resources around the world. NAMI does great work. Bridgehaven does great work. We have links to some of these other resources on our own webpage. because we realize that what we can do is be a part of someone's support system. But there's other parts that are outside our scope. And I encourage people to look into whatever it is that will help them. There is something. There's some way of curtailing the pain enough that it doesn't have to be resolved with suicide. And on that note, I have been greatly distressed with the LMPD's recent report that suicides have outpaced homicides this year. And both are heartbreaking to know about, but that suicides are this high right now through the first 3 months of the year. I think they said 40. That's a lot of pain.
Yeah, that is a lot of pain. And Travis, you nailed that, because when I heard that statistic too, I was shocked, really, and we need to do more. But you really said something that resonated with me, because I've been there too. And I try to be open and honest about my struggles as well. And when you want that pain to just stop, because it just feels like it's overtaking everything. It's not that you want to die. You just want that pain to end, and it feels awful. And then your mind goes in places where you think, okay, well, what can make it stop? And it's this. But you really said that, and that, I want to say, impacted me, because that's how I have felt before. And it's a very dark and scary place, because you think about all of the things that the ripple effect of it. If you did contemplate something like that and did carry through something like that, how it would hurt other folks as well. So I'm glad that you shared that, because I know there's someone out there that's feeling that right now, Travis. And hopefully your positive words of finding your pathway to get out of that space will resonate with folks.
I hope so. I will also say, on the note of the concerns of ripple effects, I've been in a dark enough place myself where I didn't feel I shouldn't do this to other people. It would affect them negatively. I got to a point where I felt, why should I continue living through this pain just to spare them? I became resentful of people who loved me and who I loved. That's how dark a place depression can take me. And I know from other conversations I've had that other people have gone in that place too. And it's a very hard thing for people to admit.
Yeah. Yeah. Travis, I know that this conversation is impacting folks right now. What am I not asking you that you want folks to know about DBSA, what you all do, and for those that are trying to figure out their pathway right now and they're struggling?
You're not alone. And in our setting, you'll find people who get it, who will share as openly about their versions of what I've shared here today. And that can make it easier. Our chapter co-founder is known for saying the hardest part is showing up the first time. And look, I was terrified to show up the first time. I was certain I was going to get there and I was going to open up, and everybody else was going to say, oh, you whiny little snot. This is for people with problems. Just get out of here.
Yeah.
And that's not at all what happened. And I have that concern every time I've gone into inpatient treatment or outpatient treatment or met my therapist. I'm convinced that I don't meet the threshold for who's allowed to have these problems. One of my predecessors as president once said, you can't deny someone their pain. What hurts, hurts. And that resonated with me. Our group, we've got people, various backgrounds, different parts of the community. And I think that's an important part of what we offer is that we're not homogenous. Twice a month, we have a group for the LGBTQ community that meets at Mandala House. We have people of color. We have people who are veterans. We have people of all genders. What we share are these experiences with mental health and mood disorders. That is a community unto itself. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we invite anybody who relates to being in that community to reach out for some help, to join us at a meeting. I always recommend a few meetings because there's no real uniform meeting. Mm-hmm. People are going to show up and need different things on a given night. Sometimes I go in and a night, people are just pouring their guts out about the most somber, challenging things in the world. And then I've gone in some nights and basically we're just goofing off and laughing the whole time because that's what people need that night. And they're both valid forms of help and support. Absolutely. And it took me a while to wrap my head around that.
Yeah. Travis, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate your time, all that you are doing for our community. You are definitely helping folks. And I know that that probably helps in your journey as well, knowing that you're able to help somebody as well.
Feeling useful and constructive is the most important thing for me personally, managing my mood disorders. So yeah, thank you for having me. And I hope somebody got something out of this.
I think we all did. Travis, again, thank you for your time. Folks, if you're joining us and you want to know more about Depression Bipolar Support Alliance, again, I've put a link in this stream. Click on it, learn more information. You can join one of those meetings. I think that this has been a great thing to talk about. I can see it from the comments here. Folks have really appreciated your open, honest discussion, Travis, today. So I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Myra.
All right. Take care. I'm Myra, and sorry for We Should Talk About It. Have a great day.